Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Great Canadian fight show back in your life. Volkanovski and the Korean Zombie just duked it out in the main event of UFC 273. And as usual, it's your boys just here to break it down and talk about it as always. As usual, one half of your co host reporting live from beautiful Calgary, Alberta. And joined as always by the brilliant Kyle Allen. How's it going, partner?
You know, could be better, could be better. I have some sad news for the fans.
Oh, no.
The Night's
I know where this is
Watch,
going.
the Night's Watch. We tried, but we couldn't pull it off. We got beat. We got eliminated. I'm feeling like the 2011 Canucks right now, making it to the finals, coming close, but not quite getting past the finish line. But it was a hard fought series, and the better team won.
Ah, absolutely heartbreaking to hear the Knights watch couldn't pull it off. But hey, man, you guys had an amazing season, an amazing run to the finals, and at least you guys showed up. You took it to decisive fifth game. You made the series interesting. So hats off to the Knights watch, and we look forward to hearing some more news as we go into 2022. Someone who didn't unfortunately show up in the main event, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, whether or not it's him not showing up or whether it's just a total mismatch of epic proportions. Korean Zombie gets absolutely squashed in the main event on Saturday night. Alexander Volkanovski making it look easy with a newly found striking that he seems to have polished in the last few months. Kyle Allen, let me get your reaction on the fight. He looked amazing. This guy's the champ. He's here.
Yeah, like you said, his striking looked very polished, very crisp, like basically was missing no shots. I think it was a little bit of the Korean Zombie quite not, maybe not expecting him to be so good, and another part of Volkanovski just being amazing that night. But compared to like the Holloway fights, he looked way better and like more improved. Even since the Ortega fight, I know he kind of beat up Ortega, but he even looked better than that. So this guy looks like he keeps improving no matter what. So very interesting.
Absolutely. Very, very interested indeed. Post game, Alex Volkanovski said that they should have stopped the fight in the third round. I believe it was a fourth round knockout. So he said that they should have been stopped in the third round. And he actually said he felt bad punching him in the fourth round. I mean, do you think the referees kind of let it go a little bit too long here? And what's your opinion on the rare empathy showed by fighters, in the ring?
Yeah, I don't mind seeing these kind of things like the on the feet stoppage. If someone's getting beat up really bad and it's a one-sided fight, there's no point of making the fighter take a bunch of punishment for no reason. Um, it's very much like the Gaethje and Ferguson fight. I feel like that was a good stoppage. Ferguson was just taking way too much damage, and this was almost identical to that kind of fight. So I like those kind of stoppages. Sometimes maybe their corner should even throw in the towel. I don't see that being that bad either, but I know a lot of fighters like to go out on their shield. But when you're taking that much punishment, I think it's right for the referee to step in on his best behalf.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Kyle, because that's a topic I want to kind of discuss with you a little bit. Seems a lot more common in the sport of boxing that you see coaches throw in the towel, whereas UFC guys, they seem to more so have the attitude of going out on their shield and just going out, falling asleep during a submission or going out getting KO'd. Like what why do you think that is? Like, why do you think we see it more in boxing than in MMA?
Um, I think in MMA, like martial arts and stuff like that, they kind of teach the somewhat like the warrior spirit. And I think most of the fighters kind of have that spirit that kind of go out on their shield and kind of never give up. Where boxing is more, you're basically only taking face shots, only taking head shots. Whereas MMA, you're kind of bleeding, you can take them down. So you can drag out the fight in different ways. But I think it's kind of more of a mentality thing than anything of why I don't want to say that MMA fighters have more grit in them, but it's kind of true than boxers.
Yeah, I mean, can't disagree with it. I totally agree. I think it's just they seem to have that hunger more, and I don't know. And I mean, and also in boxing, they seem to value the undefeated record a lot. Like in UFC, a lot of the champions that we currently have these days, they do have losses on their record, whereas you constantly see this boxing, 20-0 versus 20-0, and that's kind of what pumps the record and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. Volkanovski looking absolutely amazing on Saturday night. Interview with Ariel Helwani post-fight, Kyle. He says he wants to move up to 155. I mean, I know this guy was heavy, but there's a little bit of a height discrepancy there with the current 155-pound champ. Like, do you think he fares well in that fight against Charles Oliveira? If God forbid, it happens.
I think he could do it. He's held titles in, I think, at 155 in other organizations. Obviously, 155. I'm also going to say he held a title at 170 as well. I'll have to look that up, but I know he's held 2 belts or 3 belts in 3 different weight classes, but the other ones in different organizations. So he's fought at those weight classes. I think height does come into it at some point. Like, good example, Daniel Cormier, probably a little short for heavyweight compared to some of the guys in there, but he held his own. I think it depends how you fight. If you can come in on the guy and kind of throw bombs over top and land on him, I think it's definitely possible. Like, how tall? He must be kind of close to like Michael Chandler size, I would think. Maybe a little smaller than Michael Chandler.
A little smaller, yeah. I mean, I think Alex Volkanovski is like 5'6", 5'7" at the most.
Yeah, I wonder how tall Michael Chandler is. Maybe 5'8", maybe. He might be
5'9",
an inch shorter than him. So
yeah.
Still look at how good Michael Chandler looks at 155. So I think it's possible. I would like to see it. But then there's also news of a little triple C action coming up. So that's something else too.
We'll get into that more so in the news segment. But you know what? Let's go a little bit into it because, folks, if you haven't watched the fight, I mean, it was a total lopsided fight. I mean, all respect to Korean Zombie, but he got absolutely demolished on Saturday night. I mean, he got picked apart. He landed a few shots. I mean, they seemed to do nothing to Alexander Volkanovski, who looked like a polished striker in that one. I mean, let's get into the hypothetical here. Him against Charles Oliveira, Kyle Allen, who wins and why?
Against Volkanovski versus Charles Oliveira?
Alex Volkanovski versus Charles Oliveira for the lightweight championship.
That's a tough one. I haven't thought about it quite in depth, but oh man, I would still be putting on money on Charles Oliveira just size wise and his submission game. But I think Volkanovski has a good chance in that fight. I wouldn't count him out at all. I think if they made the odds, I think he would maybe be a slight dog in that fight, but I think it'd be a close fight.
I mean, folks, you know me, I just eat up the hype, and I would be going all in on Alexander Volkanovski if he were to move up. I mean, this guy was a professional rugby player, folks, who weighed over 200 pounds. And now he's the 145-pound UFC champ. I mean, I think if he goes up, I mean, we're looking at a generational fighter here, potentially. I mean, I'm eating up all the hype. I'm going all in on Alexander Volkanovski if he moves up.
And also for the fans, he played in rugby. I don't know the rugby positions, to be honest, but he played the same position as Tai Tuivasa. And you can see how big Tai Tuivasa is.
I didn't know that. That's hilarious. Holy shit. Can you imagine those guys lining up next to each other?
Crazy.
But again, congratulations to Alexander Volkanovski. We hope to see him in the ring very, very soon. Unfortunately, though, we have to talk about the Korean Zombie. Kyle, do you think this is the last we've seen of the Korean Zombie? I mean, he took a beating in that fight. But do you think they keep him around for maybe some gimmick matches or some good fight night main events, perhaps?
Yeah, I know he spoke afterwards about potentially retiring, and I think whenever you're thinking about retiring, I think your career is pretty much done. I mean, there's still some guys he could beat at featherweight, but if he doesn't have the heart, it doesn't have it in him, and this was kind of his last chance to become champion, then maybe he hangs it up and maybe starts opens a gym. I think he has a gym in Korea or something like that. And maybe see him train some up and coming Korean fighters and put Korea on the map a bit more in the MMA world.
We'd love to see that, Kyle. You're absolutely right. I mean, you can't argue against the facts, folks. He's lost to everybody in the top 5. I mean, outside of Max Holloway, they might have crossed paths earlier on. It's evading me at the moment, but I know in recent history, Savage KO of the year candidate against Yair Rodriguez, excuse me, makes Brian Ortega look like a world beater in his fight when he showed up bald to absolutely destroy the Korean Zombie. And then his recent performance against Alexander Volkanovski, again, just even though he's great, he's just not up to championship level, unfortunately. So I'm a fan. I mean, I'd love to see him, kind of go out like Cowboy Cerrone would go out. I mean, would you agree that maybe would be a good out for the Korean Zombie?
Yeah, or maybe fight one more fight or something, try to get a win, and then kind of go out in a high, or go out on a high note or something like that. That's all I can really see happening with his career, though.
Yeah, me too, because he is such a fan favorite. You love to see those guys go out, with a little bit of dignity instead of going out just absolutely getting washed in a championship fight.
And one more thing, yeah, he's been doing it for a long time too. If you think back as WEC fights and stuff like that, like he's been in the game for a really long time. So hanging up now, he's had a solid career, and I don't think there's any shame or any regret in his career or anything.
No, absolutely, folks. But there was another championship that was defended on Saturday night. It was the Bantamweight Championship. Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling going up against Petr Yan. Controversial finish here. Aljamain Sterling pulls out the win by split decision. Looks like the first round kind of factored into the decision here because the other rounds were kind of clear cut. Kyle, did you agree with the decision?
I agreed with it. I can see how people argue this and argue it more in Petr Yan's favor. Once again, I've been a proponent of it, but this is almost one of those fights that potentially could have been a draw, potentially. But I can see why they gave it to Sterling. He had a ton of control in the fight in those 2 rounds. Those 2 rounds are probably 10-8 rounds. Like he had him down the whole time, controlling him the whole fight or the whole 2 rounds. And then the first round was probably the swing round of it could have went either way.
Exactly.
But maybe the control kind of outweighed what Petr Yan did in the later rounds. That's my guess of how they scored it.
I mean, I was hearing rumblings on the internet that there was a possible 10-8 round debatable for Aljamain Sterling. I mean, I scoffed at those comments, but do you see any merit to that, or
for Sterling?
I mean, I think they were saying like round 2 has the argument of being a 10-8 is what I was seeing on the internet as in the in the comments section. Not the most valid arguments, but
like a 10-8 is what, basically like complete dominance. But he almost maybe I can kind of see it because he basically took him down and controlled him the whole round. So
yeah,
Petr Yan basically did nothing that whole round. Once he wasn't doing a lot he was trying to get him in submission off his back, but it was a dominant 2 rounds. So I see it being possible. Yeah, that's maybe why they gave it to him.
Yeah, see, I'm from the era where I hear 10-8 and I see like Gray Maynard like beating the shit out of Frankie Edgar in the first round of their absolute bangers that they had back in the day, and I see around like, for example, when Yoel Romero fought Robert Whitaker, and I think one round he knocked him down like 2 or 3 times with savage shots, and Whitaker just kind of hung out and beat him in the later rounds. That's what I think about when I hear 10-8. If you go out and you dominate a guy with wrestling and grappling, I mean, there's not a lot of damage being done. I mean, wouldn't you agree that damage kind of has to play a factor in giving out a 10-8?
I think so. But again, with these judges, you never know who's judging and what they consider 10-8 and what someone else considers a 10-8. So hard to say. But back in the day, there were some like good examples, like some of the GSP fights where he would just dominate one whole round in wrestling and maybe not do a ton of damage, but he definitely had some 10-8 rounds. So that's, I don't know, it's really subjective to how one person judges a fight, I guess.
No, you're absolutely right. But regardless of the fact, Aljamain Sterling pulls the win out by a split decision. I thought it should have been a draw. I mean, that's the storytelling in me. I mean, you set up a draw for this one. You don't really have a clear winner. You give him the draw. You set up the monster rematch, which is going to sell double the pay-per-views. I mean, hey, that's the WWE in me, Kyle. But regardless, I mean, Petr Yan comes out, clearly wants the rematch. What do you think the UFC does from here, man? What's the next step here with these guys?
I don't see them doing the rematch. Um, I think Dillashaw's been waiting a little bit too long. I think that's most likely the fight to do. And then you could probably do Peter Yan versus Aldo too, maybe.
I like that.
I feel like that's the likely outcome of what's going to happen next. But yeah, I don't see the rematch unless TJ Dillashaw gets injured or can't fight later this year or something like that. Then maybe they do the rematch. But if Dillashaw is healthy, I think that's the fight to make.
I absolutely agree. I mean, while he called out TJ, the fight is there. I mean, we love it. TJ, the Snake Dillashaw. I mean, we can't wait to see him back in the ring. He's definitely a great Canadian favorite, I've got to say. I know he's one of your favorite guys too.
Yeah, for sure. Watching him come up and like minus all the controversial stuff that happened when he dropped down to 125. But yeah, like you look back at all his fights, like his fights versus Renan Barao, and like he was one of those first guys that you saw come up and be like at a totally different level than his opponents, like a totally different level than anyone in that division. So
not to mention his duology. Is that what you say? Where it's like a two fight? You know, you got trilogy, you got duology. Did I just make up a word here, Kyle? Or
I like
anyways,
it.
I'm gonna keep on going with it. But his duology with Cody, I mean, that was unbelievable, man. Cody Garbrandt. I mean, that was fantastic entertainment too.
Yeah, you could arguably say that kind of derailed Cody Garbrandt's whole career.
Absolutely, took him right off the rails when he was destined for superstardom, coming off a fantastic performance against Dominic Cruz. But let's stay on track here. Let's make sure that our show doesn't fall off the rails, Kyle. We move on to potentially a early fight of the year candidate. This was the 2022 Chandler Gaethje. It was Khamzat Chimaev. It was Gilbert Burns. And they absolutely duked it out. Just bleed all over the hairy chest. Kyle, I was loving this one, man. I mean, am I overhyping it here? Did you have the same reaction?
I don't know. I think I fell asleep during this one. It wasn't too exciting. Said no one ever. Yeah, this was up there and probably like the top 10 all time, probably greatest fights, I would say, at least in my book. Arguably one of the like fight of the year, potentially candidate at least. We'll see on next year's Golden Gloves, but yeah, definitely a candidate and crazy fight. And we finally got to see how the hype was with Khamzat, and he delivered in a different way. He didn't dominate, but he showed that he can definitely stand in there with the top guys in the welterweight division.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad they gave it to him unanimously because I don't think it warranted a split decision. I mean, Gilbert Burns definitely landed the bigger shots, but Khamzat was way more on the offensive and was always getting up in his face. There's talks of a 5-round fight, Kyle. I mean, what do you say? Do these guys run it back in a fight night main event, 5 rounds or what?
Yeah, I think it really depends what happens with the welterweight division. So the likely outcome will be that Usman will fight Edwards.
Yeah.
In the summer. That's the talk. And then it really depends what happens with Kobe. If Kobe wants to get back in there, if he wants to fight Khamzat, then I feel like that fight's probably the better fight to make over the rematch. But if Kobe wants to sit out and he doesn't want to fight Khamzat, then I definitely see that being a possibility. You do that for a number 1 contender fight for a 5-round main event. Because that fight was close. I've heard some people argue that the fight could have went the other way and could have favored Gilbert Burns, but close fight, really good fight. And I want to see it again. 5 rounds. Who knows what happened in that 5 rounds?
Do you think Khamzat Chimaev gives Cody a run for his money when it comes to cardio?
I think Kobe still got the edge. Like you could see Khamzat was getting a little tired towards like the middle of the rounds there.
Yeah.
Burns was definitely gassed, but Kobe's gas tank is endless almost. Like Usman, I think Usman's the only one that can really hang in there with him. So I I think he would have the edge on cardio still, though.
But to kind of counter your point, like I thought Chimaev came out absolutely swinging in this fight though.
Oh, for sure.
And what I've seen with Kobe sometimes is he's more of a a volume fighter, kind of like a la Max Holloway, some would say. Pardon my French, folks. He comes in with like the 70% shots, but hits you with about 100 of them. But Chimaev was coming out and he had that he was able to kind of maintain a pace through three rounds. So
Yeah,
I loved it, and I'm happy wherever. I mean, man, Khamzat Chimaev, what a stud. I mean, man, any more thoughts on the fight, Kyle?
Yeah, like going into that fight, watching that fight, I was definitely like my heart was beating in the first round, like getting a little sweaty. But yeah, like it definitely didn't go the way I thought it would go. I thought Hamza would either come out there and just destroy him, or maybe Gilbert Burns would kind of maybe catch him in a submission or something like that and show him what's up. But man, I didn't expect that fight to go the way it did and be a crazy brawl like it was. Both guys showed heart. And yeah, it's not often you see someone from he's had what, 3-4 fights in the UFC at the most.
Out of nowhere.
And then jump into number 2 spot. And now he's curious the rankings. I don't have the rankings loaded up right now, but I'm curious to what they ranked him. I'm sure he'd be in the number 2 spot now, I think.
Top 5 at least, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm
want to have a peek, but
just gonna bring up the ranks.
But man, you're absolutely right. I mean, Khamzat Chimaev coming out of nowhere and landing himself in a fight against the number 2 guy, taking him to the distance. Very similar kind of career path to Israel Adesanya, like running into some adversity there against Calvin Gastelum.
Yeah,
who was the number 2 guy at the time, coming off of a title shot. So yeah, we'd love to see Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, as for Gilbert Burns, though, he showed up and absolutely gladiated on performance on Saturday night. I mean, the UFC absolutely can't. They can't really punish him for this, right?
no, I don't think so. I think he looked good, man. And I think Dana White gave him his win money too for the fight. And I really like the UFC is doing that. It seems like they're kind of making the thing where if you go out there and you have a crazy fight and it's a close fight, they're starting to give both fighters their win money, which I really like, because if you go out there and you put on a show, like, you definitely deserve to get paid.
Yeah.
And I'm not like the biggest fan of like the whole win bonus thing and stuff like that. Like I think fighters just get paid what they get paid and get paid a good amount of money no matter what. But I really like that they're doing that, and they're at least showing if you go out there and you show up and you get a close fight, that you're still going to get paid and you're still going to make some money on the fight.
Absolutely, man. Great Canadian show. A huge advocate for fighter pay. Let's get paid, folks. Let's get paid. But congratulations again to Khamzat Chimaev. An absolute amazing performance on Saturday night. I was trying to think of a better word to say it, but it was amazing, Kyle. I mean, he absolutely showed up, gave the fans a show, and congratulations to him. Others, we're going to get into our other shout outs here for Saturday night. And I got to give a very special shout out to Canadian Mike Mallet. Comes out with the absolute KO of the night, getting Mickey Gall out of there in the first round, 3 minutes, 41 seconds via TKO. The Canadian, we salute you, man. We salute you. Kyle Allen, did you have any other shout outs that you'd like to give from UFC 273?
Yeah, for sure. Let me just quickly take a look at this. A few small ones. Definitely Ian Gary. He came out. He looked good in his fight. Won a decision over Darian Weeks. Darian Weeks, no slouch. He put up a decent fight. But Ian Gary looks good. He looks like a interesting contender in the welterweight division. And I think we're really seeing a changing of the guard of some of these new fighters come in, and I think in a couple of years here, you're going to see that all the divisions are going to be completely different fighters than a couple of years ago, and it's very interesting to watch. One other shout out, another good fight was the opening fight. Vince Pichel. I think you picked him. Great mustache versus Mark Madsen. Mark Madsen being an Olympic medalist in the Olympics for wrestling, I think. And yeah, they both look good. Vince Pichel was like trash talking the whole fight, talking to him during the whole fight, and I thought that was a pretty good way to open the card and a good fight.
Another shout out to Mackenzie Dern, women's strawweight bout, UFC All Smoke Show squad, getting back in the winning streak with a split decision win over Tisha Torres. She came in as a very slight favorite. I called it. Kyle went against it. Folks, listen to your boy. We're going to get right into the great Canadian picks for Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night. We split the weekend, so I'm going to give myself the honors here, Kyle, because I thought, I showed some resilience in coming back and tying the brilliant Kyle Allen, so a tie is a win in my books. So I'm going to start with the great Canadian Performance of the Night, and you can't deny it. I'm going to give it to Alexander Volkanovski. New fight, short notice. It don't matter, folks. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. If you haven't watched the fight, go back and watch it. Alexander Volkanovski coming out looking like a seasoned, polished striker. Looked fantastic. He gets the GC, Great Canadian Performance of the Night, Kyle Allen.
I'm going to change it up a little bit here. I'm going to go with Aljamain Sterling on this one. Controversial fight, close fight, but I really like that he was able to show everyone that Peter Yan looks beatable. Before this, Peter Yan looked like he was a destroyer. No one's going to beat him. He's going to be the champ for sure. Sterling came out there and he had a game plan that showed that Peter Yan is beatable. You take him down, control him. He doesn't have too much he can do there. And I think he did just enough to seal himself the victory and become the undisputed bantamweight champion.
Fantastic, Kyle. Fantastic. We're going to get right into Great Canadian Fight of the Night. I mean, we don't need to talk about this one very much. I'm going to let you have the floor. I'm fairly confident that we're going to agree. So give it to me, baby.
We're going to go with tough one. Let's see what we got here. We got to go with Gilbert Burns and Chimaev. Let's not fool ourselves, people. This was fight of the year, fight of the night, potentially fight of the decade. Potentially, we'll see. But it was up there in one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. I've been a UFC fan or MMA fan for at least like 10 plus years now, and this was definitely in my top 10.
I mean, it's only April, folks, but these guys may already be getting fitted for a Golden Glove. They might have sent their hand measurements. People have hand measurements. Remember the hand model in Zoolander? But that puts a bow on UFC 273, folks. A great card. Go ahead and rewatch it if you hadn't. But now it's time for the news. And we get right into it. Jose Aldo calls Alexander Volkanovski and says he should be next, Kyle, not TJ Dillashaw. What do you think of that? Do you think they make that fight?
I would like to see that fight as a fan, as a Jose Aldo fan, as someone who's watched his fights for so long, since WEC, coming into being the first featherweight champion in the UFC. I would be down to see it, but I think TJ Dillashaw still has a little bit more stake at the throne, being the last bantamweight champion. Technically, not really losing his belt, like controversy, obviously, but he never really lost the belt to anyone. So I think he has more of a stake in it. But I wouldn't be mad if they made that fight, to be honest.
My Fox folks, I got a little bit excited with the news intro. It's actually Aljamain Sterling that is. Then we're talking about bantamweight, not featherweight. So way to stay on track, Kyle. You're a real pro, my man.
Sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
Oh, sorry.
I'm the one who dropped the old ball. Next item on the news: the UFC going back to the UK. Looks like they're going back this summer. Kyle, what are your thoughts on that? They put on a great show not too long ago.
Yeah, I love this. I love that they're going back this soon too. Like I thought maybe they'd go back like September, October, maybe give it some time to marinate a little bit, but they're going right back into it. And I love, man. That last card was arguably one of the best cards of the last, 5 years maybe. And if they can somehow get all those fighters on that card to fight, if they can get There's talk about Pimblett fighting on it. There's talk about Aspinall fighting on it. There's talk about Till fighting on that card.
Whew.
I might buy my tickets to England right now.
Let's go, mate. Let's go. Nope, that's totally Australian. Sorry about that, folks. Next item on the news, back to Alexander Volkanovski. Kyle, he was on Ariel Helwani talking about moving up to 155. I mean, we kind of got into it, but really, really quickly, again, does he beat the winner of Gaethje Oliveira?
Him versus Gaethje would be a very interesting fight if Gaethje somehow gets through Oliveira. Oliveira, like we talked about, Volkanovski. I see it being a close fight, betting odds being close. But yeah, in an ideal world, I'd love to see Gaethje beat Oliveira, and then you do Volkanovski versus Gaethje.
That Lord, would take my money.
That'd be a wild one. Or throw Volkanovski in there to test the waters, give him a Michael Chandler or something like that.
Oh. Oh. Holy. All right, let's keep going. Oh my goodness. Folks, we got to bring the intensity down just a moment here and have a serious conversation. Marlon Moraes announces his retirement today. The news comes out via his manager, Ali Abdelaziz. I mean, this guy, you know, he had a good, decent run, Kyle. You know, we wish him the best in all his future endeavors. And in honor of Marlon Vera, we're both going to discuss our favorite Marlon Moraes moment. So, Kyle, you can have the floor. What is your favorite Magic Man moment?
Favorite moment? I'm probably going to choose he has a knockout over the current champion. He has I think he was going more for trying to go for a head kick, but Sterling went in for a shot and he ended up hitting with like a kind of like an awkward kick / knee and KO'd the current champion. So I feel like that's probably my top favorite Moraes moment.
Yeah, I mean that one's definitely in my top two. It's a hand toss with the one that I'm about to tell you. It's his main event spot against Rivera. I remember I was in actually Los Angeles with a couple buddies watching it at a bar. He knocked him out in the first round with another head kick. I mean, at that point, he was well on his way to the title shot. Contended with Triple C, but unfortunately unable to get it done. And that was really the highlight of his career, was him fighting for the Bantamweight Championship. So a great Canadian. Congrats to Marlon Vera. A great career. And we hope to see him again in other organizations, maybe in a Bellator in the not so distant future. Next headline on the news, the Triple C, the triple champion, Kyle's favorite fighter, back in the headlines. He wants to fight against Alex Volkanovski again. Are we going to see this one, Kyle?
Well, I wouldn't call him my favorite fighter, but who doesn't like Triple C? He's I know he's a little cringy, but he's definitely like his talk and his trash talk and stuff like that. It's entertaining. I like when he's in the UFC. He makes the UFC more entertaining. I personally, that's the fight I would like to see. Would be Volkanovski versus Triple C. I think that's more realistic, and size-wise, I think it's a good fight. I don't know if the UFC will let him do it right away. I might see them maybe telling him to take one fight at featherweight first, which, yeah, maybe give him one fight. I don't know who you'd give him, but maybe let him wet his feet a little bit. If he can destroy someone at featherweight, then yeah, I'm down to take my money.
Side note, folks, you know summer's around the corner when Kyle's already used the line "wet his feet" twice in the last 5 minutes.
We are sponsored by Bacardi. Just kidding, we're not. But if Bacardi, if you need a sponsor, you want to sponsor us, we're right here.
Bacardi, hit us up. We've always been a fan of the Cardi. That's what we call it around here. We call it the Cardi. Last headline of the night, folks. Nick Diaz back in the headlines here. A lot of people's favorite fighter. Your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. He's back in the headlines this year. His coach says, don't be surprised to see Nick Diaz back in the octagon before the end of the year. Kyle, let's go through maybe a couple potential opponents here for Nate Diaz's older brother. What do you got?
Tough one. I want to see him back again. Him versus Robbie Lawler. He looked good. I think he just maybe needs to get in a little bit better shape. Maybe yeah, maybe he comes back and gets in better shape, and then you give him someone, definitely someone in the top 15. I'm just gonna look. I'm assuming he'll fight at welterweight. I mean, maybe you give him. This is my all-time favorite fight that I'd like to see. I think you might know what I'm talking about. Give him a little Jorge action, you know?
I mean, we'd love to see it. We'd love to see the Street Jesus back in the octagon against Nick Diaz. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that's the fight to make, and I think that's the one that the UFC should do. A good send-off fight for Nick Diaz and a way to potentially avenge his brother. So, folks, that puts a bow on another episode of the Great Canadian Fight Show, where we reviewed UFC 273. If you like the content, like and subscribe, and leave some comments. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what you'd like to see us do better on the show. Stay tuned for our quick pick segments, which is going to be coming out later this week, where we're going to look ahead to UFC Fight Night this weekend, Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. Kyle Allen, anything you want to say to the fans before we write off this episode?
No, if you haven't watched the last card that we just discussed and talked about, I recommend going back and if you have a fight pass or something like that, go back and watch this fight or watch this card. It was an amazing card, very good fights, and I can't wait for the next big UFC card. There's a few cards coming up that I think are going to be sleepers and worth watching, so tune into those and tune into the Great Canadian Fight Show.
Thank you very much, folks. And as always, signing off. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.